From the moment Donald Trump announced on Monday that J.D. Vance was going to be his running mate, conservatives immediately, and a lot of people on the left as well, reminded the world of just how much J.D. Vance used to hate Donald Trump. I mean, how do you overcome just 8 years ago calling Donald Trump America's Hitler, and then 8 years later, you're his running mate to be the vice president of the United States and you only have a year and a half of political experience? Well, it happens because you do an about face because you realize that's politically expedient for you, and you kiss Donald Trump's ass to the point where he picks you as the running mate. But Sean Hannity, who has been by Donald Trump's side through everything, the thick and the thin, decided to ask Vance on Monday evening, how do we square this, right? You called him America's Hitler. Why should we trust you? And Vance gave the most pathetic and disgusting response imaginable. Here's how the exchange took place. Sean Hannity asked him, quote, you literally said you texted a friend that Trump is a cynical a-hole like Nixon, that he's America's Hitler, and you compared him to cultural heroin in the Atlantic Monthly. And I'll tell you Trump's response, but you said that then. What do you say to people that say, well, wait a minute, what did he mean? And without missing a beat, because apparently he's been preparing for this for a long time, J.D. Vance said this. Well, Sean, I don't hide from that. I was certainly skeptical of Donald Trump in 2016, but President Trump was a great president, and he changed my mind. I think he changed the minds of a lot of Americans because, again, he delivered that peace and prosperity. If you go back to what I thought in 2016, another thing that was going on, Sean, is I bought into the media's lies and distortions. I bought into this idea that somehow he was going to be so different, a terrible threat to democracy. It was a joke. Joe Biden is the one who's trying to throw his political opposition in jail. Joe Biden is the one who's trying to undermine American law and order. President Trump did a really good job. And I actually think it's a good thing when you see somebody you were wrong about him. You ought to admit the mistake and admit that you were wrong. Here's the thing about the media in 2016 that J.D. Vance knows, but he's, of course, too, lapdog-ish to admit. See, the media was actually not as hard on Donald Trump in 2016 as they should have been. According to analysis, he received, billions of dollars in free advertising because all the networks, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox, aired his rallies uninterrupted without commercials dozens of times. Now, they didn't do that for Hillary Clinton. They didn't do it in 2020 for President Biden, but they did it in both 2016 and 2020 for Donald Trump. And in 2016, nobody knew what kind of guy he would be in the Oval Office, right? People weren't saying he was a threat to democracy. That is something that has sprung up now, a lot of it thanks to Project 2025 and, of course, based on what Trump did in office. But nobody was saying that back then. J.D. Vance is lying to you. J.D. Vance knew exactly who Donald Trump was, as did the rest of us who bothered to do even a little bit of research. But the media, the corporate media that J.D. Vance is blaming his views on, didn't do it. He is lying. So here's the other part of it too, right? Joe Biden is doing these things. Everything he said about Joe Biden is an absolute lie. And that's why he fits in well with Donald Trump. J.D. Vance, like Donald Trump, is the kind of person who will change how he feels about an issue depending on the day of the week and depending how it helps him that particular day. If it doesn't help him that day, he's against it. If it helps him the next day, he's for it. Just like with Donald Trump. He saw a lot of people cash in by falling in line with Donald Trump, whether it was in the media, whether it was on social media, doesn't matter. The pro-Trump people became huge, YouTube especially. So J.D. Vance thought to himself, you know what? There's a lot of money out there to just love Donald Trump. There's a lot of benefits. There's a lot of perks. So let me pretend that I didn't mean what I said and just act like all of that doesn't matter now. And also, just to his point, where he says, I actually think it's a good thing when you see somebody, you were wrong about him, you ought to admit the mistake and admit you were wrong. And he also says, I think he changed the minds of a lot of Americans. Really? if Donald Trump had changed the minds of a lot of Americans, wouldn't he have won in 2020, right? If they had the same epiphany that you did in 2016, wouldn't they have voted for him in larger numbers in 2020, right? So literally just the history of the United States and our presidential elections proves you wrong. But of course, J.D. Vance won't ever admit that because, like most Trump supporters, he also denies the results of the 2020 election. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your nominee for the vice presidential part of the Republican ticket. Well, folks, we have crossed that 1 million subscriber milestone, but rest assured, we are just getting started here at Ring of Fire. So if you're not already, please do subscribe to the channel and make sure to like, share, and comment on the videos.